Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 13 of Movies You Missed Podcast. I am Vee.
I'm John.
And we are excited to once again discuss movies that either flew under the radar or are worth revisiting.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to get into both of these because I feel like mine was the one that truly flew under the radar more than any of the other ones I might have picked so far.
I'm really interested to hear the stats on that and how many people have actually seen this movie before, because I had heard of it, but I certainly hadn't seen it before. So yes, excited to get into that part of it.
Definitely. I look forward to it. I hadn't watched my pick in several years, and it took on a little bit of a different meaning for me now, but I still enjoyed it, so I do look forward to hearing your thoughts and all of that fun stuff.
Nice, okay. But before we get into that, on this show, we really like to discuss, movies we've seen recently that are either in theaters or just came out, and just talk about our experience and whether or not we think they're worth seeing, to be honest with you. We always enjoy checking in with each other at the top of the show. And so to kick it off, I believe you have seen a movie in theaters that is a fun revisit.
Yes, indeed. It was the Fathom Events 25th anniversary re-release of Men in Black, starring Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones, Vincent D'Onofrio, Linda Fiorentino, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. A blast and a half to see that again on the big screen. I didn't think I was going to get to see Men in Black on the big screen again, but my schedule just so happened to coincide with being able to see it. Men in Black came out on July 2nd of 1997, so it is 25 years later. I have the DVD. I had it on VHS. I have the Blu-ray. I love Men in Black. I think it is a fantastic film, and I still think it holds up great. The special effects looked wonderful. The sound was great. It still was funny, even though I know the movie by heart. We had a great time. For those that haven't seen Men in Black, shame on you, but you really should see Men in Black because it's great. It's about an NYPD cop that gets recruited by a government agency that licenses and monitors alien activity on the planet Earth. So essentially like an immigration situation for aliens, and a bug lands on the planet and wreaks havoc on the human race for a little while. So it's a great film. The sequel is not to ever be mentioned, but Men in Black 3 was a release several years ago, and I think Men in Black 3 is also pretty damn good. And right before the movie, there was about a 10-minute interview with Barry Sonnenfeld discussing the production and the pre-production and whatnot of Men in Black, and the guy's very funny. He talked about how he had to continually tell Tommy Lee Jones not to be a comedic actor, which still doesn't really seem to have worked out because Tommy Lee Jones is very funny in Men in Black. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones play off each other very well, and we have Vincent D'Onofrio who plays Edgar, who is the Bug. What a great casting that was. So yeah, Men in Black on the big screen again for Fathom Events, kind of like how UV saw The Thing a few weeks back. Mm-hmm. And my dad and I walked out of the theater. He goes, I'm going to start following Fathom Events because we need to go see more re-releases.
Nice. I'm so glad to hear that Men in Black holds up.
Hell yeah.
And yes, I'm very excited for more Fathom Events. There are some pretty big anniversaries coming up this year. And I know it's not necessarily a Fathom event, but the thing I'm most excited for is the re-release of E.T.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's going to be epic.
I can't wait for that.
Fuck yeah, that'll be great.
Last time I saw E.T. was actually at the Hollywood Bowl with a live orchestra, and that was absolutely spectacular. Just amazing.
And I have seen Elvis, but I'm not going to talk about it because John hasn't seen it yet, and I want to wait until we can discuss it together. So maybe in the next episode, we'll get a chance to discuss Elvis.
I think so. I finally did talk my wife into going to see it in theaters because it's been getting great reviews. Not only that, me and reviewers, a lot of people that I know have seen it, and they're like, you got to see it in theaters. It's a theater movie. So we're definitely going to try and make that happen very soon.
Good. Well, whenever you do get a chance to see it, I look forward to discussing it with you.
As do I.
Nice. Okay. And so for today's episode, I believe you go first.
I think you are correct on that.
And in this episode, the theme, it's a little looser than some of the other episodes we've done before. Our theme is around sleep and unconsciousness.
Yes.
But that's kind of the only thing our two films have in common.
That is absolutely correct.
And so we're going to start off with John's pick, which is the lighter fare of the two, and dive into that first, and then just go right down a deep, dark rabbit hole with mine, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, we are.
All right.
I look forward to discussing both of these right now.
Yes. So without further ado, please kick us off.
Alrighty. So I chose the 2006 Michel Gondry written and directed film titled The Science of Sleep. This film stars Gael Garcia Bernal and Charlotte Gainsbourg, and it is one hell of a trip of a movie. If you have seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like I said in our previous episode, it's got a similarity to that, whereas Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind does feel very dreamlike. This film also feels very dreamlike, almost as if you are traveling with Stefan, who is played by Gael Garcia Bernal, through his dreams and some of his reality. His character is a bit eccentric. We find out early on that he is moving back to Paris from Mexico after he has just lost his father. His parents divorced when he was a young kid. He's now back in Paris, and he's moving back into his childhood home, which is, oddly enough, where Michel Gondry used to live 15 years before they started the production on this film. So that's kind of fun that Michel Gondry went back to his childhood as well while shooting this particular movie. We're introduced to Stefan after, again, finding out that his father's passed away. We are brought into this makeshift movie studio, and it's made of egg cartons, it's made of boxes. He's got the camera literally made out of packaging boxes.
I love
the
that.
walls, it was so awesome. The soundproofedness of his studio is all milk cartons, and it's just very simple, very makeshift. And we realize that we're actually in Stefan's head, and Stefan is explaining to us how dreams are prepared. And he starts throwing in some photographs, and he's like, photographs, memories of the day, some songs that you've heard throughout the day or throughout the week. He's tossing in a couple like 47s and 72s and whatnot, tossing in some herbs and spices and some onions, and he goes, relationships, friendships, all those ships, and he starts to kind of stir it around, and then it starts to bubble, and we get a little bit of smoke, and he goes, oh, here we go, and he goes over off camera, and that's when we're introduced to the opening credits, and it becomes this kaleidoscopic dreamscape, which I really liked because this gives us a little bit of an insight as to how damaged, unfortunately, Stefan is after losing his father. Then we meet Stefan in real time, and he's moving into this apartment. Like I said, he finds out from his mother that she set up a job for him in Paris, and he is going to start that job the next day. And to his knowledge, this job is an artist for a calendar creation company. I'm not sure what they're actually called, a calendar office. I don't know what it really is called.
Yeah, I've never heard of a company like that.
Right, yeah, but there's definitely companies that make calendars. So I've never met anybody that works at making calendars, so I don't know what the technical term or the proper term would be. So forgive me if you work at a calendar shop and you're screaming, what that title of your job is. But he thinks he's going to be this, artist and get his artwork out there and seen by people. Unfortunately, that's not the case. He's got a bit of a boring job. It's not really artistry. He's really just gluing text onto paper. And he meets Guy at this job, and Guy is already the comic relief immediately. He's like, this job is boring, but it's easy. The interesting thing about Science of Sleep is it is in 3 languages.
Yes.
And it's in a lot of English, a lot of French, and every now and then in Spanish, because Gael Garcia Bernal's character Stefan was just in Mexico. He is also of Mexican descent from his father's side.
Yeah, it's funny how when he goes to this job, and I think they call him a typesetter for the job he has to be doing, and not being an artist that his mom kind of duped him into coming back for. And my biggest problem with the job is that he started the day after flying to France from Mexico, and the jet lag alone would make you want to die.
Exactly, yeah.
Let alone how menial that job is.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's interesting. I never actually thought about the jet lag until just now. It's like, that's country to country. That's across the world. So after Stefan shows Guy his artwork, Guy is like, why don't you show the head honcho your artwork? He brings it into the head honcho's office, and that's Monsieur Pouchet, and he's showing him his art, and it's very morbid art. And one is an exploded airplane, another one is a Mexican earthquake aftermath. And Stefan is narrating each picture for Monsieur Pouchet, and he's trying to get this idea off the ground that people remember worldwide events, disaster events in their collective memory, and he wants to call this calendar disastrology. And Monsieur Pouchet just does not want anything to do with it, and he's telling Guy, like, get this guy out of here, get him back to his work. He has a job here already. I'm not interested in the art. So that really makes Stefan angry. And when he goes home, he goes to sleep, and he has this very fascinating dream about how he essentially wants to take over the office from Monsieur Pochet and have his artwork seen and have this calendar made. The thing about Stefan is he has a very difficult time distinguishing reality and his dreams as two separate events. That's one thing that I really like about this film. I have never had that issue, but there are dreams, like I was telling you about mine from this morning after I fed the cat and went back to bed. Some of the dreams really do feel real, and I feel like I am there, and I feel like I'm screaming, or I'm, being kicked around, or watching something happen that I should not be watching. And that's one thing that I think the Science of Sleep really nails, is the distinguishable idea of going from fantasy to reality, and fantasy being the dreamscape. And the other thing that I also really like is that every dream almost works out in Stefan's favor, and that's one thing that I found to be very authentic in dreams and in life, because there's also sequences in this movie where Stefan really psychs himself out, and he's not sure if it's actually happening or if he's stuck in a dream again. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Inception and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which was the film before this. So there's a lot of very interesting moments in Science of Sleep that make me feel like I am actually dreaming while watching this movie because of the way that it's put together.
And for the viewer, you cannot distinguish reality and the dream either. I mean, it takes...
Right.
Some of the special effects, which are largely stop motion, for you to be like, oh, this is definitely a dream. But yeah, you definitely feel as a viewer that you're not on solid ground throughout this movie, because you are in there with Stefan and with his almost hallucinations sometimes, because the blending and bleeding through of dreams into the reality and vice versa is very prominent in this movie.
Exactly. So after all of, his first dream, he's actually woken up by a drill coming through the wall, and we find out that there's a new young lady moving in next door to him, and he, over a sequence of very unfortunate mini events, Stefan is then thrust into this young lady's apartment. He oddly enough lies to this young lady about who he is. Her name is Stephanie, and she's played by Charlotte Gainsbourg, and if anybody knows Charlotte Gainsbourg, she actually was in Independence Day Resurgence. She is also in the last 4 or 5 Lars von Trier films. She was in Antichrist with Willem Dafoe. She was in Melancholia with Kirsten Dunst. She was in Nymphomaniac Part 1 and 2. Charlotte Gainsbourg, great actress. I really like her in this movie. She plays a very down-to-earth but also kind of eccentric young lady. They hit it off pretty early on in the movie. Then Stefan kind of begins to develop a bit of an attraction for her. And in life, when men or women start to develop attractions, there's a lot of doubt that comes up with those. And I think that the doubts that develop over the time of this movie with Stefan towards Stephanie are very authentic.
Mm-hmm. And that classic, oh, well, he's only talking to me because he wants my friend's number because my friend's so much prettier than me.
Right.
Which totally happens. And
it does happen,
That was a very authentic piece of the movie. And yes, I love how this movie embraces awkwardness. That these people are very, like you said, eccentric. There's a lot of awkward moments in this movie, and it really embraces it. This movie doesn't set up to mock these characters in any way. Instead, it's the opposite. It sets up a lot of empathy, where Stefan, throughout the movie, you are developing empathy for him, especially for me, man, when he wakes up out of that dream that he's in the snow and he wakes up and his feet are somehow in a mini freezer.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, like how awful would that be to wake up and not really know what you've done or how you got someplace, and not be just safe in your bed. How jarring and scary that must be every time, and I'd be scared to go to sleep at that point. And so
I would too.
There's a lot of empathy built up because we are fully following him throughout not only his day but his mind.
Yeah, and I really like the way that Michel Gondry does build that sort of rapport between characters and audience, because, like you said, you do feel empathy for Stefan. You even feel some empathy for Stephanie at several times in the movie,
many
because
times,
she's
dealing with him.
She's dealing with Stefan, who is just, he essentially was thrust into her life. And one of my favorite sequences is after he is coming home and actually Stephanie is leaving. She's about to go do some laundry, and he's punching in, he for whatever reason can't figure out the code to unlock the door to this building. So Stephanie's coming out, and there's a moment in that sequence where we are viewing this from a wide shot. And Stephanie opens the door, she's got her bag, and she like hoists it out and takes a step out onto the sidewalk. And then when we go into the closer up shot of this, she does that over again. And I feel that editing like that in this movie is completely intentional, because we are almost being reminded that she stepped out of that building in front of Stefan, and maybe Stefan didn't perceive it that way. One thing about the editing, like I said, is I feel it's very deliberate, and I feel like it kind of gives you that deja vu aspect of, didn't I just see that? Mm-hmm. So, it's with Michel Gondry, if anybody's seen any of his music videos from the 90s up until now, that's really kind of his shtick, is like his editing is very precise, and as are his shots.
That actually makes sense to me, because many times we'll catch something where we're like, oh, the script supervisor maybe didn't catch this the first time around, or with editing, like, oh, I wonder why they put this shot in. Or my favorite is when like somebody got in a fight and their big cut on their face is on their right side of their face, and then the next shot it's on their left side, right? And I'm like, oh, whoopsies.
Right, yeah.
And yeah, you can see continuity errors in movies that are absolutely not intentional. And I think you're right that this could be one of the few movies where something like that would have been intentional. Because it's, again, keeping you on your toes as a viewer, right?
I think so, yeah. And again, like, with adding into the dreamscape and the deja vu aspect of life, you're like, didn't we just do this? Or haven't I done this before? After Stephanie and Stefan have a little chat there, she's like, all right, I'm going to go do my laundry. And then she stops and she goes, you know what, I'll do my laundry later. Do you want to hang out? And then they go upstairs and they start hanging out. And she starts talking about this little boat that she's making. And she's like, oh, I'm going to have this be like a forest boat, like, put it in a little forest. And Stefan gives her the idea of putting the forest in the boat and putting it in water. And she goes, well, how can we get some water? What would we do with this exactly? He goes, oh, we can make like a little short animated film. So yeah, he's like, oh, a vegetable Noah's Ark. And she's like, I actually really like that idea. How would we get water involved in that? And he goes, I don't know, how would we do that? And they run to the sink and they turn it on, and cellophane comes out, and they look at each other like, cellophane? But we also have the audio of real water coming out of the sink. So they're like, cellophane, and they run back in. So she's got all this kind of stuffing, from like pillows and blankets and stuff laying around. And she's like, yeah, we can take these clouds and throw them up in the sky and they can float. And as she does that, he hits her piano to try and get a note. And he's like, oh no, wrong note. He does it 2 or 3 different times, and then he finds the right note, and the clouds actually end up staying up. And then we get this really cool swoosh back and forth of the clouds in the sky. So they're right. That whole sequence I just really love, because they're connecting on a level of something they can actually do together, and he's found the right chord to keep things afloat.
The right frequency.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I love that scene.
So
I agree.
It's such a trip, and like the shadows on the wall of the clouds, because not only is it just one cloud, after we cut away from Stefan again, she's like got like 9 clouds in the hanging from this. Not even hanging from the ceiling, they're suspended in the sky. It really was really cool, and that's, again, one of my favorite sequences. And she's got this stuffed pony on the top of her piano, and she goes, oh yeah, I had to pick that pony up because he just looks so sad and lonely. And he's like, oh, what's the pony's name? And she goes, his name? Golden the Pony Boy. And she just, it's just right off the fly. And then later on, we've come to find out that she named the pony after him, because Stefan does look sad throughout this whole movie. It's not like
he does
completely depressed, but he's still, dealing with his father's death, and he's dealing with being accepted at this new job. He's trying to accept the new job, accepting his mother's new boyfriend, and trying to get accepted by Stephanie. And I believe that scene is when the attraction starts to build between them both. And I really like the way that they play off of each other, because it does feel very natural. It's almost as if Michel Gondry went into that room with both of them and a camera and was like, have some fun.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about the movie. It feels that way for a majority of the movie.
And I love the special effects being very practical, stop motion animation. This is not a CGI heavy movie in any way. Like, you can absolutely tell these are special visual effects that have been used. I really like that. I think it adds a lot of heart to the movie, and there are a lot of times where if a movie is created well, then these kind of quote-unquote cheaper effects aren't looked at as either slapstick or something cringy or awkward. In reality, and instead, these effects are actually value adds to the story, and I really, really like that about this movie.
Definitely, yeah. The stop motion and special effects are great, and one thing I'm not sure if you are aware of this, there's almost no chroma key in this movie, and it's similar to how he shot shot Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where there's one scene in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind where Joel and Clementine are sitting outside of a drive-in movie theater. And they're watching some movie, and they're making up their own dialogue for the movie, which I think every couple does at one point or another. All of a sudden, Joel looks to his right, and Clementine is vanishing and disappearing. And then he reaches in to grab her and hug her, and she's back again. That was done in camera. That was not done on any special effects.
Whoa.
What happened was they slid a piece of glass in between them both in the car, and it was like thick enough glass to like make her start to disappear. And then as he reaches for her, they like pulled the thing out real quick.
Oh wow!
So isn't that fucking nuts?
That's
so
really good timing too.
It's
that's
crazy.
Really and so this director did in fact do Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's not just like, these movies are kind of similar. This is the same director.
Oh, no.
Oh,
yeah, Michel Gondry
okay.
wrote Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Charlie Kaufman.
Okay, great. That's actually really good to know, because the first thing I thought of when watching Science of Sleep was, oh man, just the way they hold the camera. They don't use a steady cam. This is very authentic. You just feel like you're in the room with them, and yeah, it totally reminded me. The style of recording made me think of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and of course the subject of the movie. So that's actually really, really cool that he's the same director.
Yeah, I found that was one reason that I went to see Science of Sleep. It was like, Michel Gondry did Eternal Sunshine. I'm going to check this one out. And I actually saw Science of Sleep in theaters at the Sunset Cinemas down in West Hollywood across from the Laugh Factory. I went with my buddy Andrew, my buddy Aaron, and it was us three, maybe like 5 or 6 other people, and this young lady that was sitting behind us. After the movie, we always watch the credits, and she apparently had stayed for the credits too, and we stood up and we turn around and we see her there, and we're like, oh, hey. She goes, hi, and we're like, huh. And then, we're walking out of the theater, and she's not really near us at all. And I look at both of them like, man, we should have asked her to join us. Like, she was just by herself. And then we all ended up piling into the elevator in the parking garage together. She joined us in the elevator, and she just was like, what'd you guys think? Like, she started asking us, a whole bunch of questions about the movie. And we're like, oh my gosh, we loved it. We thought it was so awesome. It was so different. Like, just like Eternal Sunshine, it was shit I've never seen before. And I really, really liked it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was heartwarming, and at the same time, very sad, and it was a great movie. So I'll always remember the fact that we never asked that young lady to join us, but we had a conversation with her in the elevator, so that was fun.
That's awesome, and definitely reminiscent of Stefan, where he, envisions something that doesn't happen, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's pretty much all he does, unfortunately.
Yeah. He is a very sad man, and I think part of that is also because he struggles with the fact that his dreams are so vivid, and they put him in semi-precarious situations. Like, there's one piece of the movie, and the way he interacts with Stephanie is because of a dream he has, and it really puts him in hot water. And you just have a lot of empathy for the guy because he can't control it.
I know, it's crazy. The one scene I love is when he is dreaming and he has Martine in the bath with him, and he starts writing that letter, and then he reaches for the pen and paper, and there's like stuffing from a pillow, but like it's supposed to be soap on his hand, and he like grabs the notepad and the pen and paper, and he's like trying to write in French, English, and Spanish, and it's like it's this jumble of words like, I am your neighbor, there's nothing more to say than that. And then we cut to him standing in a cave with a massive typewriter being typed on by like what looks like giant hairy spider legs, and it's just like the weirdest fucking shit, It's just like, what the hell? And then he drops this note under her door. He walks back into his house, and as he's dropping it, he's fully naked, but he's got that pillow stuffing all over him like soap, and he's like shivering because he's just out of the water. And then he gets back into the water, but as he gets in the water, he wakes up into reality, and he splashes around in the bathtub, and he's like, what the... Whoa, did I just leave a note under Stephanie's door? Oh shit. And then he tries to go get it with a hook, and then we get Stephanie's side of that later on, which I thought was just fucking fantastic. Then we keep going in and out of Stefan's brain too. Like every now and then Stephanie will be in there, and they'll have a conversation in his head up against that blue screen. It really, really puts in your head that you as a person, you create scenarios in your head that have never nor will ever happen. And you fuck yourself up with
all
this.
The time. Yep.
And that's human nature. And I think that's another thing of Science of Sleep that I really, really love, is because that whole scene with her, like, are you upset? They're not having that conversation at all. It's just in his head. Your mind gets just bent up around this movie. And one sequence that I really, really love is when we're introduced to Stephanie early on in the movie, and she's unloading, a U-Haul, and she steps to the left as so does a guy on the street. Then she steps to the right and so does that guy on the street. And they keep going back and forth.
That awkward stranger dance.
Yes. And it's like, and everybody always ends with, let's dance. And then that's when you break that up. It doesn't matter. Every human being says that in any fucking language in any country. Let's dance. And that's when it breaks it up. So in this movie, Stefan gives us what this is called, parallel synchronized randomness. And he's writing it on his TV, and then he spins the PRC, and it keeps going and going and going and going. And he goes, parallel synchronized randomness. And he takes two dolls and goes, now, this happens in the brain where one person will go left, the other person will go left. And then and then they correct it, and then they correct it, and then they correct it, and then they correct it. And then he goes, these people will be stuck in this for infinity. And it's just like, fuck, man. It's so fucking brilliant. I love it. I love it.
PSR. Parallel synchronized randomness. An interesting brain rarity. And our subject for today. Two people walk in opposite directions at the same time. And then they make the same decision at the same time. Then they correct it. And then they correct it. And then they correct it. And then they correct it, and then they correct it. Basically, in a mathematical world, these two little guys will stay looped for the end of time. The brain is the most complex thing in the universe, and it's right behind the nose.
Yeah.
I loved how Michel created this movie. It was very odd, and I usually don't super enjoy movies that deal with that level of eccentricity, but I did enjoy this movie. I thought it was very sweet, and just like you said, it's very unique.
Yeah. And I watched the making of, actually, after watching Science of Sleep, and I've watched the making of this movie every time I watch The Science of Sleep. It's one of those that I need to know how certain things were done. Watching the making of The Science of Sleep is very fascinating because not only did the director of photography and Michel Gondry go to school together, have known each other since they were children, they really locked in the colors. And Michel Gondry, in some of these sequences, like he has a train that goes across this city that has been built, and the city is made of empty cardboard toilet paper rolls. And it's so simple, but yet it's so true to dreams because, it's like, oh, what is this made out of? And in dreams, when you touch things, they don't always seem to be texturally what you think they would be. And I think that Michel Gondry really uses that to his advantage in this movie, especially with his imagination. I mean, if you've ever seen any of his music videos, like I said, they're so awesome, and so are these movies.
And I really love all of the artists in this movie who built all of these little models and sequences and stuff. They are so sweet. And, like you said, his recording studio at the beginning of the movie where the cameras are made out of cardboard. And yeah, that city was so cool. I'd love to see.
So awesome.
Maybe in the making of it has it, but just a wider shot behind the scenes look at the city that they built all out of cardboard. I was like, wow, how creative.
Oh, yeah. No, it is. It very much is. And there's a lot of sequences in this movie that are all in camera, and that's another thing, like I said earlier, that just blows me away. And one of my other favorite sequences is the dream that he has where he's the drug dealer, and Stephanie is like all the women that have ever hurt him in his life, like leaving him for another man, and the man that she's leaving him for is Guy, because, I mean, not necessarily Guy, but in a dreamscape, it's always somebody, like, he said earlier on, how dreams are prepared. It's like who you hung out with, the relationships and friendships that you have, they're all incorporated in your dreams, and that is 100% true, because most dreams that I have involve people that I know.
Yeah, and so these people that you know are put into these roles that are not logical or do not fit the real world, but because they're a known entity, they fill that void of whatever character your brain is creating. And in this case, the guy that's stealing the girl. And of course, Guy wouldn't, like you said, wouldn't do that, but it's definitely accurate for dreams, that's for sure. Yeah.
It's pretty bitchin'. I really like this movie a lot. I mean, I really could spend an hour straight talking about this movie and breaking it down, but we do not do spoilers here. I think what we've talked about is a pretty good summary, because it really is a movie that you need to experience for yourself. The meaning, kind of like The Fountain in episode 3, this movie takes on a different meaning every time I watch it, wherever I am in my life. And this time around, it accentuated the anxiety for me a little bit because, again, Stefan's moving back home. I just relocated. I have 2 jobs that I'm trying to do the best that I can at, and there's always that anxiety that you're not doing enough or that nobody likes you. And I've been dealing with that a lot because I'm brand new and my big booming personality may not mesh well, but I feel like it's working out so far. And that's one thing about Stefan that I liked is, regardless of him doubting himself so much, there's still a good amount of confidence in him to really put himself out there. And, he doesn't always get what he puts out there back, but that is all a part of life.
Yes, absolutely. I recently read an article about personalities and trying to make friends and things like that. And the analogy they made, which I think is one of my all-time faves for this situation, is you are a puzzle piece and you have to find other people that fit your puzzle piece because they're each their own. And a lot of times you just try to force puzzle pieces together and because of you really like someone or you lack confidence or you're trying too hard or it's just not a fit, but you try really hard to force them together. And the more you realize that it's okay if puzzle pieces don't fit together, the more you won't struggle with trying to make friends because you'll be able to let go of those ones that just don't quite mesh with you. And it's not your fault or their fault. You just have different personalities. And I really liked that analogy. I thought it was the most fitting. Pun intended, I guess, for that subject. Because, yeah, you're right. And you and I are very similar in that way. We do have big, booming personalities. One of the reasons why we are very good friends. And there's a lot of times where people meet and then don't make friends with. But, similar when we meet someone and you're like, oh, yeah, they're cool, but, probably wouldn't be friends with them. And so, you said, that's absolutely part of life.
Indeed. Good breakdown on that there, V. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That is The Science of Sleep, written and directed by Michel Gondry, starring Gael Garcia Bernal, Charlotte Gainsbourg. Great film. Give it a shot if you would like to, feel like you're in a dreamscape. The Science of Sleep was released June 30th, 2006 in France. It was limited release September 29th of 2006 in the United States. The budget was $6 million. Opening weekend in the U.S., it grossed $347,000. The U.S. gross total was $4.5 million, which is pretty good for a U.S. release with a movie with 3 different languages and
limited
with the subject matter, a limited release.
That's very good.
The world... Yeah, I think so, definitely. I'm sure Michel Gondry was very happy with that. The worldwide gross ended up being $15 million, so that's pretty good. That's almost $10 million more than the budget, so good on that and good on everybody involved. The reason that this fell under the radar was because if you have seen The Science of Sleep, that's pretty much a reason enough. But it came out against some interesting films in 2006. It came out against The Guardian with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher.
Yes.
It came out against Open Season with Martin Lawrence and Ashton Kutcher. It came out against School for Scoundrels with John Heder and Billy Bob Thornton. And it came out against Flyboys, which I don't think I ever saw Flyboys. And I actually never saw The Guardian or School for Scoundrels, but I did see Open Season.
I've seen The Guardian.
I figured you probably would have.
Yeah, it's that makes sense that you didn't, especially because it's Kevin Costner. It's about a Coast Guard. It's that classic savior movie. It's not good.
Yeah,
whatever.
Oh, it's not. Oh, okay.
No.
Well, either way, though, that's what it came out against. And again, with a limited release at the Sunset 5 in West Hollywood, that's a 5-screen theater, and that theater is prominent for movies like this, independent and foreign. Other than that, I personally had not seen Gael Garcia Bernal or Charlotte Gainsbourg in a film until this one. I know Gael Garcia Bernal has been pretty prominent in Mexico, where he originated from. I know he's in Y Tu Mama Te Bien. I've never seen that movie. Charlotte Gainsbourg, like I mentioned earlier, she's in a few Lars von Trier movies, some of which I wish I had never seen. Yeah. But I did see them, and I'll never see them again. Antichrist being one of them. But I really did love her in Melancholia. I thought she was fantastic in Melancholia, and that is my favorite Lars von Trier film.
Nice. And I know Gael Garcia Bernal from The Motorcycle Diaries, and he also lent one of the voices for The Book of Life, which is...
Oh, that's right. Yes, he did.
The DreamWorks...
That is a strange one, too.
Coco before Coco came out, I think is a good comparison.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's true. It is very much similar to Coco.
And I love that movie. I thought they did a great job, and it's a very sweet movie. If you haven't seen Book of Life, it's an animated movie. Go check it out. It's great.
It really is. Yeah, that one very dreamlike as well. I thought that was a pretty good one. And Charlotte Gainsbourg, she's popping up every now and then. Like if I see her on a bill, I'll check it out because I really like her.
Nice.
And same with Gael Garcia Bernal. Yeah, I think he's a great actor from what I've seen him in. Yeah, again, this is one of my favorite films, and I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. I was honestly sitting there halfway through, and I kept looking at my phone, and I was like, I'm just waiting for her to text me that she cannot stand The Science of Sleep. But I've proven wrong, so I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, and you know, I think this is definitely not a mainstream audience movie. This is a movie for people who like quirkiness, who enjoy these independent, non-Hollywood movies. This is not a glossy movie in any way. But like I said, any movie that tries something different and has a lot of heart, I mean, I might watch this movie one more time in my life. I did enjoy it, but it's not something that's going to be part of my regular viewing library. But I love the way it's crafted, and it's very sweet, and I love it whenever a movie examines people who, you know, are just a bit different.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a good film.
So, yeah, thank you for picking it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think we are ready to completely throw everybody on their heads with your pick,
Yes.
which was 6 years earlier than mine.
Yes, it was made in the year 2000, and interestingly enough, discussing Men in Black at the top of the show, Vincent D'Onofrio is also in my movie.
Yes, he is.
This is the 2000 Jennifer Lopez-led The Cell. This is one of the most fucked up movies that I'm a fan of.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that might change after we get into some of my horror movies.
Yes, I hope so. But yes, this is a very, very dark movie. This is a movie about a serial killer, and fans of true crime, Silence of the Lambs, that style of story as well as film would be big fans of this movie.
I completely agree with you on that. Absolutely.
Fabulous. Great. Okay, so diving into it, we start off with Jennifer Lopez in this beautiful, and this is a great opportunity to discuss how fucking beautiful this film is.
Oh, yes, indeed.
It is dark and twisted, but gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
It really is gorgeous, and the DVD copy that I watch is actually my wife's DVD copy. Ooh. So there's that. Yeah, my wife is a big Jennifer Lopez fan, and she introduced me to The Cell about 3 years ago. So this was actually my second time ever watching The Cell.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, great. Well, I'm excited to hear what your opinion is of it. And I think it's a really interesting storyline. So we start off with Jennifer Lopez she's wearing this beautiful white dress on these dunes.
Oh, gorgeous dress.
And you're really trying to figure out what the hell is going on. It's a very interesting sequence where she walks up to this young boy, and what you soon discover is that she is in kind of this dream sequence, and she's actually at a scientific facility. She's a social worker, and this boy is a billionaire's son who is in a coma and has been in a coma for several years. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to basically help him find his way back to reality and consciousness. And it's this very cutting-edge scientific center that these people have developed this technology that's very interesting. And parallel to that, we are introduced to some police officers and an FBI agent who are hunting a serial killer. And we get introduced to the serial killer, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, so fucking well, convincingly. He is such an incredible, underrated actor. He does weird without making it cringy or comical or overdone. He is so good at playing these types of characters. Again, you know, like we discussed, Men in Black, he's so good as the alien bug. And my sister and I talk about, he's like wearing a suit, like an Egger suit. Gosh, he's so good in this film. So yeah, he's a serial killer, very dark, very twisted, very damaged. He's a very damaged individual, which we find out very quickly. Yes. And so one of the things that I love about this film is that there are two parallel storylines. There's the serial killer and the cops that are chasing him, and then there's this social worker and these scientists who are working in these basically dreamscapes. And the way that the director Tarsem Singh combines these storylines is very natural and very beautiful. And I think he did a great job at that, because a lot of times, if you have competing storylines in a movie, the movie gets very jumbled very quickly.
Yes, agreed.
And it can give you some problems. So Vincent D'Onofrio's character, Carl, has killed 7 women so far. And very quick into the movie, he's actually tracked down by the police and caught. But the problem is that he's had kind of this mental break, and he's now catatonic. And there is a woman still missing who the police believe is alive. And the head FBI agent is played by Vince Vaughn in a serious turn. And he purposely chose this film and this role because it was a serious turn after all of his comedic work. These cops need to get into this guy's mind to find this woman who's still alive, this victim who's been kidnapped. And so that's where they discover Jennifer Lopez, the center that she works at, and the work that they're doing there. So then we spend the rest of the movie in the mind of this killer.
Oh, yeah.
The deep, dark recesses of a serial killer. This is very, very fascinating. And at the same time, thinking of the own dark recesses of your mind, and if someone, entered into them, what would they see?
Oh, yeah.
And also thinking of, God, the director and screenwriter for this film has really fucked up imaginations too, but a lot of us do. There are a lot of times where we wouldn't want other people knowing what we're thinking about, and
definitely not.
We all have, dark parts of our minds as well. And so it's done very beautifully and very interesting. It actually, a lot of the scenes were based on famous paintings, which is interesting because a few episodes ago we talked about portraits and paintings with Portrait of a Lady on Fire, your pick.
Right, yeah.
So that is the gist of this movie. It's very fascinating. It examines the mind of a killer. And honestly, you kind of build a little bit of empathy for him too, because of the fact that, it goes into his past, and he ends up showing Jennifer Lopez, who's a guest in his mind, things that have happened to him and kind of what helped create him as a serial killer.
Right, yeah. That was some hard to watch stuff for sure. I mean, majority of the movie is hard to watch.
Yes.
And I didn't, it wasn't one of those where I was looking away. I pride myself on not looking away anymore. But there have been times in the past with certain movies where I definitely was like, I cannot have this in my head. But this was not one of them. Although when I texted you, I was like, good fucking God, that was fucked. Like
Yes.
I said, second time I've seen this movie. Like you were saying, the opening is beautifully shot, but I love the fact that it's full of confusion and uncertainty, because where the hell is she going? She's got this horse, and then when she starts talking, there's that echo, and you're like, okay, so this isn't real, or it's a dream. And then we find her laying down in that facility. The use of audio in the movie is really, really awesome, because I think it's almost as true to a dreamscape as you can get in a movie. Even next to movies like Inception or even Tenet. We always kind of go into Christopher Nolan, but they have that kick in Inception to start bringing them out of the dreamscape before they're back to reality. Like you said, when she gets in his mind, it's really just a fascinating, twisted, puzzle-like world. And like my pick, there's the use of water a lot in the dreamscapes. And I love that because many of my dreams, if I'm running late, I feel like I'm sloshing through water and I'm trying to get there quickly, but I cannot move as fast as I want because I'm either suspended in water or I'm the water's to my waist and I'm just trying to trudge and try to get the fuck out, and I can't. So I thought that it was used beautifully. And it's interesting to me that water was the catalyst for both of these movies because they dealt with dreamscapes. And going back to Inception, the first kick that takes DiCaprio out is he's suspended in water. He gets pushed into water. I feel like water is very prominent in the dreamscapes of just about every human being on the planet.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And what I saw was a big difference with these two movies, which I noted, was in The Science of Sleep, you can't tell what's reality and what's a dream in a lot of the scenes.
Right.
And you're really not sure. You're just following Stefan and as confused as he is. Whereas in The Cell, it is very obvious. It is very clean. When it is reality, when is this dreamscape? And I really, really like that. I thought it was very cleanly done because the police raiding or her walking through that parking lot, it's very, very 90s shot. It very much looks like any other movies you saw in the early 2000s, whereas the dreams are very stylized and beautiful and and have almost even a different tone to them and a different contrast to them. It's very, very interesting.
Right.
And one of the things I did want to bring up, though, is that parking lot scene. So the last victim gets kidnapped in a parking lot.
Oh, yeah.
Every single woman can relate to this scene.
I think so. Absolutely.
It is a dark parking lot. She comes out of the elevator. The first thing she does is she grabs her keys in one hand and her pepper spray in the other.
Yep, yeah.
And I really had, the thought that came up for me is women are the ones who have to think about this. Men never have to go through a parking lot thinking, okay, how do I get prepared? How do I quickly get into my car? Who's parked next to me? And
no, you're right.
And just really noting the fact that women have to think about this and men never have to think about this.
Yeah, that's true. Right when she gets out of the elevator, I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, shit, here it is. And in a weird way, it was kind of a brilliant tactic on, using the dog. And then she gets out of the car.
So brilliant.
And she realizes that she didn't even touch the dog. There's a fucking brick behind the wheel. And then that's when it happens. And
it's such a vicious trick.
It really is. It's so nuts. And I literally was sitting there, I watched the movie by myself. And as she takes out her pepper spray, I said, oh, good, you got that shit out. Good.
Yeah.
And it was null and void. But at the same time, it's like you definitely have that in the back of your mind, like especially when she gets in the car, she locks the door and you're like, she's safe.
Yeah.
And then she backs up and then she's no longer safe.
Exactly. And, just something to think about that I think myself and a lot of other people would note that this is something that women have to think about all the time, and it's a bummer. But I thought it was very accurately portrayed by a male director. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
And one thing I do wish is I actually wish this movie was longer. If there had been more development of Jennifer Lopez and Vincent D'Onofrio's character building that rapport inside of his dreams before the second half of the movie kicks off, it's crazy how this movie is not gory. This movie is not gory. It's just really disturbing. You see some fucked up stuff. But
you do.
It's not full of gore. Like, this isn't, I would say more in the thriller camp versus the horror. It's kind of a horror movie, but.
I would say, though, it's thriller horror. And like you said, it's not very gory, but there is one scene that definitely made me hold my stomach. And I was terrified to find out that was actually a medieval torture device that existed back in the day. So, yeah, that was fucked.
Yes, it was.
And D'Onoff was, in that sequence, his costume.
When he's the Mad King, it's like the
man.
Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland is kind of what I equate it to.
Yeah.
Oh, he plays many different characters in this movie because they're all characters in his mind, and he embodies every single one so nicely.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when she first shows up in his mind, and he's got that purple cloak.
Oh, that thing is so badass.
Did you know that was digitally put in?
Well, I could tell just because of the age of the movie.
Okay, fine.
But it is still very beautiful and does hold up.
It does. It holds up very well. Yeah, and I'm curious if the Cell will come out in 4K because I don't know if you're aware, it actually, what we have been given of the Cell so far since its release, DVD and VHS release, is the United States version. So there is actually a somewhat of a director's cut. It was the European release where there's 2 minutes of extra footage in one specific scene, and I don't know if I'll ever need to see it, but it's on the Blu-ray release. It was not on the US release on the VHS or DVD. But when the Blu-ray was released, it was included in it. And then they never indicated that it was like a director's cut or had extra footage at all. So they just kind of thrust it upon the fans of the United States.
Huh. And so that's interesting because usually they like to advertise that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know that until I started researching this movie. And in the scene that we're discussing, it's when he's suspended, right?
Yes.
I don't need 2 minutes more of that.
Definitely not. No. Nope. It's disturbing enough.
Well, and that's the thing, is that it's disturbing. It shows you who he is as a serial killer. It shows you how damaged he is. And it was just enough to set the scene and give you more insight into this killer without being gratuitous. And I feel like an extra 2 minutes of that would be nothing but gratuitous.
That's all it is, yeah. It's 2 minutes more of stuff that we don't need to see.
No, we don't. We don't. This movie's very fascinating. I really enjoy it. I think it's, again, a very beautifully made film. And I actually really enjoy the people who are in it. Jennifer Lopez, I know that she's a bit divisive as an actress. She's a little bit hit and miss as well. Look, I don't think she's a phenomenal actress, but I do think she has been in some entertaining movies. I think she's great in this.
Yeah, she's very good in this.
I really enjoyed her in Out of Sight and Selena.
Oh, yeah.
She did a great job in both those films. And
Selena's great.
Yeah, and her recent rom-com, Marry Me, that's on Peacock, I found very entertaining as well. It was a very sweet movie.
Nice. That's her and Owen Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I know my wife has been wanting to watch that one. Maybe we'll check that one out.
Yeah, it's basically a new take on Notting Hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Vince Vaughn, as I mentioned, is the head FBI agent in this movie, and I thought he was hilarious in the early 2000s, Wedding Crashers, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Dodgeball, Old School. I've really enjoyed a lot of his comedic movies, and he did a great job in this film, too.
Yeah, I liked him. I didn't mind him so much in this. I thought he portrayed an FBI agent that was a little damaged as well, pretty well. I think this was one of his more serious roles next to like Lost World Jurassic Park because he wasn't necessarily a funny guy in that. He was essentially a PETA dinosaur, whatever you want to call it.
Dinosaur appetite.
PETA for dinosaurs.
Yeah,
there we go.
exactly.
Thank you. Yes.
And Vincent D'Onofrio is fantastic in this movie. He's just so good at these weird characters. You know, we talked about Men in Black. He was Gomer Pyle in Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, yeah.
And then his more straight-laced roles show you that he is an actor of range. He's not just this weird guy who can only play really weird characters, but he's just a douchebag in Jurassic World, right? Which you did not see, but I can tell you.
I saw the first Jurassic World. He's
you did?
in the first
Okay.
one.
Yes,
yeah.
he is.
Yeah, he has the single worst line in Jurassic World. Actually, no, that's not true. He has one of the worst lines. We are training the raptors to be military fighting animals. Fuck yourself. Stupid.
Once again, giving John an opportunity to talk about how terrible the sequels to Jurassic Park are, which I wholeheartedly agree with.
So funny. Yeah, we do bring that up a lot. Sorry, everybody.
No, it's okay. It's your opinion.
I'm not really sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I think that one of the few opinions I think is objectively true.
Indeed.
And he most recently was in Daredevil as Fisk, who's the Kingpin. So he's like the head bad guy in the Netflix series Daredevil, and he was very good in that.
Oh, cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, he's great. And just, I think, very underappreciated as an actor. He's extremely talented.
Yeah, very much so. When he is first introduced, you don't see his face for a while. Mm-hmm. And then after a minute, we do see his face. And I got to be honest with you, I really was unsettled immediately because of the way his hair was laying across his face, and just the stoic gazing as Carl, not even when he's in the dreamscape, because when he's in the dreamscape, like you said, he's different characters and they all embody like a different monstrous section of his mind. And like the first one with the purple velvet, and he's coming down the stairs like, where do you come from? Like, that's fucking scary. I'll always remember that in the trailer when I saw it, and I just was like, I'm not watching that movie. No way.
Well, and then also when he's the reptile character.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, just so strange. Just very visually, and I mean even just the way he embodies each different character that he plays in the mind of himself is beyond insane. Because there's differences in every single one of them, and I think that's another reason why the movie works, is because, like you said, if you get into the deepest recesses of your mind, what are you gonna find?
Yeah,
a
lot of different characters like his.
Yeah, it's crazy. Maybe not as homicidal as his.
Hope not.
Well, hopefully not. Yeah, but definitely. Like you said, there's empathy too for him when we learn far more about his past. But in a weird way, empathy still does not translate to forgiveness.
Of course not. No,
so
absolutely not.
It really, in a weird way, kind of like how I think perfect example of empathy without forgiveness is the way that Rob Zombie has created the serial killer family. I don't know if you have seen House of a Thousand Corpses or Devil's Rejects or Three from Hell, but it is a trilogy about a family of serial killers. During Devil's Rejects, there's a torture sequence where the family's being tortured by this cop, and you kind of want the family to kick the shit out of the cop. But they're fucking serial killers and they're twisted as fuck. They don't deserve empathy or forgiveness, but you're like, oh, I don't know, I like these characters. It's moralistically fucked, kind of like how Game of Thrones was. You love Cersei, but you fucking hated Cersei.
Well, and that's the thing that I thought was the best part of Game of Thrones is that one episode you absolutely hate a character, and the next episode you have complete empathy for them.
Right. Yeah,
and
it's nuts.
That was actually the best part of Game of Thrones, the thing they did, what that was the most well done, which is creating multifaceted characters.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and I mean, a huge fan of Rob Zombie's music, so might have to introduce me to one of his films at some point.
Well, it would have to be House of Thousand Corpses first, definitely.
Okay. Yep. A couple other notable actors, just because I'm sure people will recognize them. Dean Morris, who is Hank in Breaking Bad, again plays a cop. Great guy.
Yeah.
And Jake Weber, this is the first movie, one of the first movies I remember him from where he's actually a good guy, because like in Meet Joe Black, for example, he's such a slimeball. But for other people, including my mother, they would recognize him from Medium. He plays Jake Dubois, the main character's husband.
There we go. I recognized him from Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, nice. Yep, he's in that too.
Yeah, he is.
And lastly, Pruitt Taylor Vince, who I discussed in Constantine, is a doctor in this movie, and I think the most regular character he's ever played that I've seen him is
I watched his eyes the whole time, and they barely moved. It was almost like that was interesting. When he showed up, I was like, oh wow, look at that.
Yep.
Hadn't seen him in a minute.
Yeah, so just a great cast, not hugely famous stars, but all very solid actors who I'm a fan of all of them, and just a very well-made film. Tarsem Singh is the director. He's Indian. He hasn't done too many movies. He's done a lot more music videos. The other movie that I know of and that I'd seen of his is called Immortals, and that had Henry Cavill before he got super famous. Very forgettable movie, but it was very pretty, so it made sense that he directed it once I learned that, actually.
It was very pretty, but yeah, I didn't like that movie.
No, it's not very good.
Not at all.
And there is a scene in this movie that I instantly recognized. I was like, man, this set is very, very familiar to me. Why is that? Why does it look like I've seen this before? And it was because it is basically the set of Losing My Religion music video by REM, which he directed.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. It's funny you say that, because watching the movie and with that first cut to Carl sitting over the bath with the deceased young lady in the pool of blood, and Catherine walking around to him to start talking to him, I was like, this does look familiar. And I didn't pause the movie, but I quickly just went to the trivia and saw that. So I thought that was really cool, the way that Tarsem incorporated one of his early projects into his first feature film.
Mm-hmm. Beyond the sets, the other thing that makes there's a lot of beautiful visuals, but the other thing that makes this movie gorgeous are the costumes. Very creative, very interesting.
Man. Gorgeous costumes. Like I was saying from the get-go, Catherine's dress in the opening sequence, just that white, feathery,
beautiful,
over the shoulder. Yeah, she looked gorgeous in it, and it was a very beautiful dress, and everything that she wore in the mindset was just stellar.
Mm-hmm. Eiko Ishioka, and apologies if I mispronounced that name, was the costume designer on this film. And she was recruited by Tarsem after he saw that her costume design for Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992 received an Academy Award, which anybody who's seen Bram Stoker's Dracula knows that the costumes in that are fucking cool.
Yeah, they are pretty sweet.
He fell in love with her extravagant designs and really wanted to collaborate with her, and they ended up collaborating on all of his future projects until her death in 2012.
Yeah, that was sad to hear.
It was very sad. She was a very creative, beautiful artist. The interesting thing is Mark Protasevich, who is the writer of this film, he's also helped write the first Thor movie and also I Am Legend and a few other screen adaptations. He has disowned the film. He said that the final film barely resembles his original script. It went under several rewrites, and he is not proud of the final result. He hopes that someday the film can get improved with a remake, and I really, really want to read his screenplay because I want to know what the hell was different.
I absolutely do. When I read that, I really was disappointed, honestly, because it does happen a lot. Scripts are really they're bought, and then once they're bought, a lot of times in the contract, the writer can't do anything else with
it's
it
the
after
studio's
it's been purchased.
property. That's it.
Yeah, so it was very interesting to read that because I would really love to read his original vision.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because first of all, I think the movie turned out great. So I'm really curious what he's talking about. But also, was it darker? Did it have a different conclusion? Were some of the dreamscape sequences completely different? What is it about his screenplay versus what the final product was so disparate that he had to go and disown the film? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So it's very, very fascinating. So maybe we should hit him up on social media and ask him.
Yeah, we should, definitely.
So the last two pieces of trivia I want to share, just because I find them, I was so tickled when I heard these. First of all, this movie, very, very rightly so, received mixed reception. This is early 2000s. This movie is kind of fucked up. Like, a lot of people were like pearl clutching at this movie, and I get it. And so it did receive mixed reviews. However, the late Roger Ebert named it as one of his top 10 favorite films of the year 2000.
I read that as well, and that actually was fascinating to read considering Roger Ebert's taste in certain films.
Yes, agreed. But again, for a movie maker, high praise, because he's a very notable reviewer. And lastly, speaking of Vincent D'Onofrio and just how exceptional he was in this movie, he later admitted that his wife refused to sleep in the same bed with him for more than 2 weeks after seeing his performance in this movie.
What?
Yes.
No way.
That
is a trip.
So disturbing and scary in this movie. He scared his own wife.
Wow, 2 weeks. No, you're sleeping on the couch. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I
don't
saw
trust
what you
you.
did in that
I'm
movie.
locking the door. You might murder me.
That's crazy.
Yes.
I wonder what that was like. I wonder how that made him feel. I guess that's like some of the best praise that a spouse
That's
can
what
give
I
you
was
over
thinking
it.
too.
Yeah. That's pretty wild. My gosh.
Yes. And
I wonder if he called Jennifer Lopez and was like, "Do you believe what's going on in my house right now because of this movie?"
He definitely would have called Tarsem, I think.
Oh, I imagine so.
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been awesome to... I'm curious what kind of conversations they had on set, because I watched all the special features on the DVD, and there were more interviews with Tarsem about this style and the look of the movie than anything else. And, I mean, he mentioned how fun it was working with the actors, but they didn't really go into a whole lot of, like, in-depth conversations about what it was like working with Vincent D'Onofrio to kind of get him to where he needed to be, or there wasn't any real... There was one quick blip with Vincent D'Onofrio, him talking about how much fun it was making the movie, and how he... I know it's
just
weird
funny
to say.
it's just weird to say about this movie, but yes, I understand.
It really is.
That's actually a flip for us, because I usually like to watch the special features and behind the scenes and interviews and everything like that, and you usually don't, because you don't like the quote unquote movie magic to be broken for you. Except for, this is one of those films where we're swapped. You watch the behind the scenes. I have zero interest in watching anything about the making of this movie. I don't want to lose that movie magic of just being in these people's minds and how beautiful of a creation the final product is. And so, yeah, I love the fact that you've watched the making of and behind the scenes and you enjoyed watching those. But for me, I don't want to do that with this movie.
Oh, really? Well, I like hearing that. Cool. Because I almost didn't do it, but I was like, no, you know what? I want to hear Tarsem talk about it. Mm-hmm. Because I have the Blu-ray of The Fall, which is a movie that we actually mentioned was his second feature film. Mm-hmm. And that one stars Lee Pace. That one is about a stuntman that gets injured in the 1920s and befriends a little Romanian girl in a hospital and tells her this grand old tale. And that movie was shot over 7 continents, and it took like 3 or 4 years to shoot. And
what?
It is a magnificent film. If you haven't seen The Fall, V, you got to watch that ASAP.
Okay, that is really fascinating, and I actually love Lee Pace, so would definitely be happy to watch that movie. Maybe that should be on your list.
I think it's going to be, yes.
Fabulous. So that's my pick. You can rent it from Amazon for $2.99. Would you watch Science of Sleep with your grandma?
I would watch Science of Sleep with my grandma. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I think she would find it very weird. I don't know if she would like it, but I'd have her watch it if she were even remotely interested.
Okay. I would not watch The Cell with my grandma.
Oh, no? Oh, I would.
Oh, really? Would she like it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think my grandma would actually like The Cell quite a bit, actually. She likes those weird ones like that, so I think she would enjoy it.
Nice. Well, my sister introduced me to this movie years ago. She's a big fan of horror, and she's the one who's just sprinkled a little bit of horror throughout my movie journey and introduced me to this film, and I'm very grateful that she did. I wouldn't watch this with my grandma, but I totally would watch this with my dad. He has a wide range of taste when it comes to movie genres, and I'm pretty sure he's actually seen this film already.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so don't show this movie to anybody under the age of like 20-something, though. This is absolutely an adult movie.
It is a hard R for sure.
It is a hard R, yeah, but visually stunning and very, very well put together.
Agreed, indeed. I'm glad you picked it.
Thank you, yes, and I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It will be a while before I watch it again, but yes, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I only watch this once every 5 to 7 years or so. This is not a movie that I watch on the regular for sure.
Yeah. I get that completely.
All right, well, that wraps it up. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. It is so helpful, and you can find us on all the social medias at Movies You Miss Pod, and our Gmail for any feedback or recommendations is moviesyoumisspod@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from someone with a recommendation. We would totally do it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Please do send us some recommendations.
And so for next week, we are definitely lightening the mood a bit with some rom-coms. And my pick for next week is the 2004 R-rated rom-com called The Girl Next Door. And that you can watch. It has Emile Hirsch in it and Timothy Olyphant, who anybody who's listened to this podcast before knows I'm a big fan of. And you can watch that on Netflix or Hulu right now.
Awesome. I have only seen that movie one time, and I did not like it at all.
I can't wait for that episode. I can't wait
I'm
to talk
curious
about
if I'll
this.
like it. I'm curious if I like it this time. I saw it when it had just come out. We'll get into it. We'll see after I watch it for a second time.
For sure.
And my pick is from 2010. I actually did the advertising for this movie, and I wrote it off because I thought we had only gotten all the funny parts. So I ended up renting it one night at home, and I laughed my entire ass off. I think it is a extremely underrated romantic comedy. It's also R-rated, starring Jay Baruchel, Alice Eve, T.J. Miller, Mike Vogel, Nate Torrance, one of my favorites, Kristen Ritter, Deborah Joy Rupp, and Adam Lefevre. And that is called She's Out of My League. And I love that movie. I can't wait to watch it again. I watch it several times a year because, again, it makes me laugh a lot. And you can watch that on Amazon with a subscription on Amazon Prime or a Paramount Plus subscription. You can also rent it on Apple TV for $3.99. And, give it a shot if you want to check it out before we discuss those movies.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to... once again, just to continue to mix it up and introduce our listeners to films from a wide variety of genres.
Hell yeah, as am I.
All right, so another episode in the books. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And as we like to end our podcast, film is a form of art, and in art, every opinion is valid, except if you think...
Green Book deserved Best Picture over Black Klansman.
Oh my God, so accurate. Fuck, I hated that movie.
Yeah, Green Book is not a good movie.
It's not.
There are moments of Green Book that I liked, but after reading the making of it made me so angry.
It's same. If you do not have the blessing of either the main character or their family, stop what you're fucking doing. Oh man,
exactly.
As soon as I read that, I just got really pissed.
Indeed. Yeah, that was it was great that Black Klansman did win adapted screenplay, but it deserved far more than that.
It absolutely did. That movie's amazing, and so are the actors in it. We should.
Oh gosh.
Oh God, we need to add that to our list.
It's on my list. It already is.
Fabulous. Cool.
Yes, it is.
Gotta love a Spike Lee joint.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thanks everyone again, and until next time, take care.
Cheers, everybody.